Something strange has started happening inside NASA, and no one will say why. A single image was posted on their archive late at night, almost like they hoped no one would notice. At first it looked harmless, just another nebula sitting thousands of light years away. But when people zoomed in, the shape didn't behave like gas. It formed a pattern, a structure, something too clean, too exact. A bright core shaped like an eye, wing-like light stretching in perfect symmetry. It looked less like a star and more like something described in ancient stories. The fiery beings that stood above the throne of heaven, the ones called seraphim. And the moment these images spread, something changed. NASA went quiet, very quiet. But the silence didn't stop the questions. It only made them louder. The object was labeled MyCn 18, a name that sounded cold and technical, but the structure inside it felt anything but random. When people enhanced the photo, the center formed a near-perfect circle, smooth, bright, and focused, like an eye watching from deep space. And around that core, the wings didn't scatter like smoke. They bent outward in balanced arcs, rising and falling with almost engineered precision. This wasn't the sloppy chaos most nebulae show. It was controlled, almost designed. And the strangest part, ancient texts describe beings made of light, with wings that stretched above, below, and around them. They were said to shine like flames, to burn without burning out, to stand as guardians between realms. So how does a modern telescope capture something that looks exactly like them, unless it never was a star in the first place? Ancient stories describe seraphim in ways that feel almost impossible today. Beings wrapped in fire, with wings that expanded in every direction, and a radiant center that was not a face, but an eye, a single burning core that saw all things at once.
Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more awe-inspiring stories of faith, survival, and miracles.
Most people think these descriptions were poetic, symbolic. But when side-by-side images appeared online, something became clear. The structure of MyCn 18 matches those writings far closer than chance should allow. The eye-like core, the upward wings, the downward wings, the sideways wings, the fiery halo. It was all there. And here's where it gets even stranger. MyCn 18 is known for its strange geometric shape, its sharp edges, and its almost perfect symmetry. Astronomers have admitted for years that they don't fully understand why this nebula is so precise. But ancient texts never struggled to explain patterns like this. They said the sky wasn't empty, it was occupied. And maybe it still is. NASA, of course, gave the usual explanation. A dying star, they said. Gas and dust pushed out by stellar pressure. Nothing unusual, nothing special. But that answer didn't sit right, not because of what they said, but because of what they didn't say. They never mentioned the symmetry. They never explained why the central shape looked so clean. They never pointed out that the wings stretched almost the same distance in every direction. They just posted the photo and moved on. And here's the odd thing. MyCn 18's central star isn't even centered. It's off to the side, like the explosion didn't match its own origin point. Scientists still debate why. Some think a second star might have been involved. Others think a violent event pushed the gas unevenly. But nothing, they say, explains the eye in the center, or the wings, or the shape that shouldn't exist. Then another pattern appeared, one that made the mystery even harder to ignore. Far from MyCn 18, someone caught a spinning light in the sky. At first it seemed like a star, but when the object began to rotate, rings formed around it. Rings that looked like wheels inside wheels. The darker the night got, the clearer the circles became. And suddenly, people remembered something. Another ancient being, another description that sounded impossible until now. The ophanim, the wheels within wheels. The beings covered in eyes that moved without turning. Most people had never heard the word before, but once the comparison was made, the match was eerie. The glowing rings, the rotating center, the shifting light that seemed to respond, almost like it was aware of being watched. The footage spread fast, and just like before, official explanations arrived even faster. A camera glitch, a lens flare, a passing plane, anything to avoid admitting the obvious. These shapes didn't match technology. They matched scripture. And now the question changed again. If the sky is showing us two patterns at once, what else has been hiding up there? This is where everything becomes harder to explain. Because MyCn 18 wasn't the only object with impossible symmetry. Other nebulae, real ones photographed by Hubble, show eyes, rings, wings, and halos too. The Helix Nebula was nicknamed the Eye of God. The Cat's Eye Nebula looks mechanical, almost engineered. The Eskimo Nebula forms rings around a central core like layered armor. NASA gave each of them simple names, simple labels. But the patterns kept repeating. They weren't accidents. They weren't random. And they didn't look like the shapes textbooks taught us. If these are just clouds of gas, why do so many look alive? And why do they echo descriptions written long before telescopes existed? The deeper people searched, the more strange details surfaced. MyCn 18 wasn't captured in normal color. NASA used narrowband filters that isolate specific elements. They took multiple exposures, then mapped those wavelengths into visible colors. The final image wasn't false, but it wasn't raw either. Someone chose which colors to show. Someone chose which layers to combine. Someone decided what the world would see. And here's where the tension spikes. Hidden in NASA's archives is an uncorrected version of MyCn 18. A version where the eye looks even sharper, even more like a living core, even more like something staring back through the void. Why release the calm version publicly, but bury the raw one under technical folders? Maybe it's nothing. Maybe it's normal. Or maybe the first image wasn't the mistake. Maybe the mistake was letting anyone see the original at all. Once people started asking questions, older clips surfaced again. Footage of rockets rising into the sky, only to break apart against something invisible. At the time, it was blamed for engine failure, but the more viewers watched in slow motion, it looked stranger. The pieces didn't fall like debris. They scattered like the rocket hit a barrier, something solid enough to stop a launch in its tracks. Ancient stories mentioned a dome, a firm boundary in the sky, a barrier that separated realms. Most people dismissed that idea long ago. But then, MyCn 18 appeared. The seraphim-shaped star, the wheel-shaped light, the eye-shaped nebulae. One anomaly is easy to ignore. Two is harder. But three, something starts to break. Suddenly, people began looking at the old maps of the sky, the ancient symbols, the stories carved into stone. Over and over, they found the same shapes: eyes, wings, wheels, and halos. They weren't random designs. They were records, descriptions left by people who believed the heavens were alive. And now, thousands of years later, NASA's own images are echoing those same designs. MyCn 18's core glows like a living eye. Its wings rise with impossible balance. Its shape matches myths instead of models. And the timing couldn't be stranger, because NASA has been updating their archives, renaming objects, and quietly replacing images. Some appear for days, then vanish. Others return with new labels, almost like someone is trying to control which shapes we notice and which ones we don't. So now the question isn't whether MyCn 18 looks like a seraphim. The real question is why it looks like one. Why the sky is repeating the same message. Why the shapes are getting clearer. Why images appear, disappear, then return with pieces missing. And why anyone would want to hide a star if it was truly just a star. Because if MyCn 18 is more than gas, if even one nebula is more than dust, then the sky is an empty space. It's something else. Something older. Something the ancient world tried to warn us about. And whatever's out there might not be hiding at all.